Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Carmine's Arena, a cultural gourmet of information, if you will, a feast for your mind and soul. And now, without further delay, the man, the myth, the maestro, Carmine Arena.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome to Carmine's Arena, site of contest and conflict, venue for and of resolution. Resolution in terms of focus, remedy, and commitment, both yours and mine, to the preservation, the propagation, and indeed the celebration of Western civilization. The great are great because they manage to express and create something which surpasses both themselves and their times. This is a truism ignored by narcissistic nitpickers who seize upon great people in order to tear them down and assign guilt. These overcompensating types ceaselessly continue to whittle away until they've cut and shaped people to their very own pasty, puny size. After a lifetime of experience, examination, and expression, I've comforted myself with the accomplishments of the great, while finding tempered amusement in those conceited critics who usually reveal much more about themselves than their far more elevated targets. Their catch-as-catch-can, catch-all revelations ultimately deplete their very own misbegotten convictions unto achieving more than merited mockery. For incapable of ever surpassing themselves and their self-adulation, they begin to fill their emptiness with cynicism. Cynicism which routinely places any and all at an even more distant remove from truth and reality than, say, belief in fairy tales. Such critics of whom I speak are truly little people. Little people because of their belittling natures, arrested from intellectual development and clear-headedness. Their long habit of looking down their out-of-joint noses result in somehow overlooking their clay feet. Their vocal rumpus equivalent to the loss of bifocal focus, while all the while standing on the broad shoulders of their betters. In short, the great are great not because they're good, but because they are significant. In many instances, they remain great because they developed into their very own and only competitor. Thus, we lucky many become their legatees, their collective heirs of creative transcendence. While having to abide and endure, of course, the tainted hot breath of their gossiping snipers and opportunistic vipers, why even Jesus doesn't escape their poisonous scorn right up to his crown of thorns. Each put there by those lesser and least of our species. I love the very sound of words, and there's a wonderful 5-syllable word for said nitpickers and naysayers. And that word is nullifidian. Nullifidian, whose 5 syllables match the 5 senses which have been dulled by the faithless. Now, Oscar Wilde wrote a quite thoughtful and moving prose poem which addressed the problem attendant upon judgment and the assigning of guilt. In very fact, in most of Wilde's output of plays, stories, poems, and essays, this Irishman was possessed by the theme of guilt and has been noted before on Carmine's Arena. The Jews may have well invented guilt, but it was the Irish who refined it to a high art form. So now, let's listen carefully to Oscar Wilde's provocative prose poem entitled The House of Judgment. And there was silence in the house of judgment, and the man came naked before God. And God opened the book of the life of the man. And God said to the man, Thy life hath been evil, and thou hast shown cruelty to those who were in need of comfort. And to those who lacked help, thou hast been bitter and hard of heart. The poor called to thee, and thou didst not hearken, and thine ears were closed to the cry of my afflicted. The inheritance of the fatherless thou didst take unto thyself, and thou didst send the foxes into the vineyard of thy neighbor's field. Thou didst take the bread of the children and give it to the dogs to eat. And my lepers, who lived in the marshes, and were at peace, and praised me, thou didst drive forth unto the highways, and on mine earth, out of which I made thee, thou didst spill innocent blood. And the man made answer and said, Even so did I. And God again opened the book of the life of the man. And God said to the man, Thy life has been evil, and the beauty I have shown thou hast sought for, and the good I have hidden thou didst pass by. The walls of thy chamber were painted with images, and from the bed of thine abominations thou didst rise up to the sound of flutes. Thou didst build 7 altars to the sins I have suffered, and didst eat of the thing that may not be eaten. And the purple of thine raiments was broidered with the 3 signs of shame. Thine idols were neither of gold nor silver that endure, but of flesh that dieth. Thou didst stain their hair and with perfumes, and put pomegranates in their hands. Thou didst stain their feet with saffron, and spread carpets before them. With antimony thou didst stain their eyelids, and their bodies thou smear with myrrh. Thou didst bow thyself to the ground before them, and the thrones of thine idols were set in the sun. Thou didst show to the sun thy shame, and to the moon thy madness. And the man made answer and said, Even so did I. And a third time God opened the book of the life of the man. And God said to the man, Evil hath been thine life, and with evil didst thou requite good, and with wrongdoing kindness. The hands that fed thee thou didst wound, and the breasts that gave thee milk thou didst despise. He who came to thee with water went away thirsting, and the outlawed men who hid thee in their tents at night thou didst betray before dawn. Thine enemy who spared thee thou didst snare in an ambush, and the friend who walked with thee thou didst sell for a price. And to those who brought thee love thou didst ever give lust in thy turn. And the man made answer and said, Even so did I. And God closed the book of the life of the man and said, Surely I will send thee into hell, even into hell will I send thee. And the man cried out, Thou canst not. And God said to the man, Wherefore can I not send thee to hell? And for what reason? Because in hell have I always lived, answered the man. And there was silence in the house of judgment. And after a space, God spake and said to the man, Seeing that I might not send thee, and may not send thee into hell, surely I will send thee unto heaven. Even unto heaven will I send thee. And the man cried out, Thou canst not. And God said to the man, Wherefore can I not send thee unto heaven? And for what reason? Because never and in no place have I been able to imagine it, answered the man. And there was silence in the house of judgment. Now, yes, now if God himself can be perplexed, and yes, stymied in making judgments, what may we say of those terminally incurable critics, all geared to smear and smirk rather than remain silent, and yes, perhaps more pliant? Yet I am not to be hastily misunderstood, nor beloved by any who believe in the total absence of judgment, for sound judgment is singularly necessary. Avoidance of judgment would be a gross error, leading to ever more grotesque error. but the required judgments of which I speak must be those which emanate and are evoked by the unique wisdom of reason, reality, and renewal, not the nihilistic triumph of treason, triviality, and generic disapproval. In point of fact, and to summarize, most knee-jerk critics are trapped in the trappings of conceit, raised to the nth degree. And those trappings bespeak narcissism, a suit of armor that routinely needs oiling by even oilier followers. Here again, lo and behold, is Oscar Wilde in yet another prose poem about, you might have guessed it, a prose poem about Narcissus, whose theme of self-love is worthy of your unexpected reflection. Pun intended. And I quote, "When Narcissus died, the pool of his pleasure changed from a cup of sweet waters into a cup of salt tears. And the nymphs came weeping through the woodland, that they might sing to the pool and give it comfort. And when they saw that the pool had changed from a cup of sweet waters into a cup of salt tears, they loosened the green tresses of their hair and cried to the pool and said, 'We do not wonder that you should mourn in this manner for Narcissus. So beautiful was he.' But was Narcissus beautiful?" said the pool. "Who should know that better than you?" answered the nymphs. "Us did he ever pass by, but you he sought for, and would lie on your banks and look down at you, and in the mirror of your waters he would mirror his own beauty." And the pool answered, "But I loved Narcissus because, as he lay on my banks and looked down at me, in the mirror of his eyes I saw ever my own beauty mirrored." Thus, all narcissists end by clashing. So thus they lead lonely lives listening to the empty echoes of self-congratulations. On the other hand, a wise skepticism is the first tribute and attribute of a good critic, and may I add, the first attribute of a wise listener. For the color of greatness has an enduring hue no scrutiny can burn away. The great poet Lord Byron pointedly said the following: "A man must serve his time to learn any and every trade, except censure. Critics mostly come ready-made. But those who escape shortcuts put forth criticism that recognizes no position as final, and refuses to bind itself by the shallow shibboleths of any sect or school. Such as these critics thereby gain that serene philosophic temper which loves truth for its own sake, and most importantly, loves truth not the less because all too often the truth is unattainable, much like perfection." How little we have of this temper throughout the civilized world, and how much do we need it? The intellect of our species is wasted in the sordid and stupid quarrels of second and third-rate politicians and self-important academicians. Our new breed of brimstone preachers. If one contemplates the ordinary pulpits and platforms of talking heads, one can but feel both contempt and despair. We are grossly dominated by the fanatic, whose vice practiced with zealotry is their sincerity. Anything approaching to the free play of the mind is practically unknown amongst us. People cry out against the sinner. Yet it is not the sinful directly, but the stupid who are our shame. There is no sin except stupidity. For criminality, perversity, and evil itself are no more nor less than the crippled applications of idiocy. As the great Maimonides recommended to the lovers of cliques, be ready to hear the truth, no matter who speaks it. This grand piece of practical wisdom well applies to the unwisest critics of all, for all too many suffer the hazards of their profession, whether in government or in the courtroom. I refer, of course, and with cause, not only to politicians but lawyers who champion not truth but their client. They're a necessary evil given the artifice of any legal system devised by mankind with its perpetual menacing greed for money, loitering about for mischief. I personally know a sorry few who would agree and have agreed with me in unbuttoned moments of admiration and friendship. However, as these loftier legal minds, I've been honored to know, would agree, far too many of their colleagues prefer to lower the bar they presumably passed rather than raise the bar. In the championing of lying, these very officers of the court rehearse innocence while making a mockery of guilt and making of us a duplicitous culture of litigious, entitlement-seeking loafers, lushers, and Lotharios who whistle at beauty while at once demeaning it. Such be that underbelly of posture and pose. I here again repeat the wisdom of Maimonides, rabbi, physician, and philosopher, one of the greatest men civilization has ever produced. Be ready, he said, to hear the truth, no matter who speaks it. Were lawyers ready to embody that mandate, perhaps then, indeed then, we shall have ceased to be litigious critics, and thus there will be golden silence in the house of judgment. Now, I have a few moments, and I should like to read what a listener sent in. These are remarks from court records. This is from a book called Disorder in the American Court. They are things people actually said in court, word for word, taken down and now published by court reporters, and that had the torment of staying calm whilst these exchanges were actually taking place. Here are some. I only have time for a few. Attorney: are you sexually active? Witness: no, I just lie there. Attorney: this myasthenia gravis, does it affect your memory at all? Witness: yes. Attorney: and in what ways does it affect your memory? Witness: I forget. Attorney: you forget. Can you give us an example of something you forget? Shall we move on? Attorney: now, doctor, isn't it true that when a person dies in his sleep, he doesn't know about it until the next morning? Witness: did you actually pass the bar examination? Attorney: the youngest son, the 20-year-old, how old is he? He's 20, said the witness, much like your IQ. Attorney: were you present when your picture was taken? Are you serious? Replied the witness. So the date of conception of the baby was August 8th? Witness: yes. And what were you doing at that time? I can't repeat the remark on this program, but I think you can fill it in. She had 3 children, right? Yes. How many were boys? None. Were there any girls? Your Honor, I think I need a different attorney. Can I get a new attorney? Now, just about 2 more. I have so many more I'd love to share with you. Attorney: how was your first marriage terminated? Witness: by death. And by whose death was it terminated? Witness: take a guess. Lastly, and my favorite, doctor, before you performed the autopsy, did you check for a pulse? Witness: no. Attorney: did you check for blood pressure? Witness: no. Did you check for breathing? No. So then it is possible that the patient was alive when you began the autopsy. Witness: no. How can you be so sure, doctor? Witness: because his brain was sitting on my desk in a jar. Attorney: I see. But could the patient have still been alive nevertheless? Witness: yes. It is possible that he could have been alive and practicing law. My friends, till next time, keep the faith.
If you have any comments or other remarks, and that I perhaps could even read on some of these broadcasts, please do not hesitate to write to me, Carminie Arena, P.O. Box 1029, Larchmont, New York 10538.